Today we are going to be learning how to solve quadratic equations in standard form by factoring. So we've already learned all the different types of factoring, GCF, dots, and trinomial. So let's look at what we're going to do. For numbers 1 and 2, it's already factored out for us. So I'm just going to show you what to do after you factor for 1 and 2. So when you see once you factor and it's equal to 0, we T-chart it like this. Okay, so we're going to draw a line between all of the factors. So y plus 5 is a factor and y plus 6 is a factor. So we're going to draw our line between the two and make a little T-chart. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring down this term into this box, y plus 5, and we're going to set it equal to 0. I'm going to take this term and I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to do the same thing and set it equal to 0. So now I have two equations that I know how to solve. I know how to solve y plus 5 equals 0. I get y by itself by subtracting 5 on both sides. So I end up with y equals negative 5. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to get y by itself by subtracting 6 on both sides. I get y equals 0 minus 6 is negative 6. So y is equal to negative 6 and y is equal to negative 5. When we solve quadratics, it's always going to be two answers. You're going to have two answers each time for a quadratic. And if we remember, a quadratic has a squared. This doesn't have a squared just because it's already been factored for us. So let's take a look at number 2. So again, since it's already factored for me, I'm going to T-chart it. And I have 4y minus 1 equals 0. We add 1 to both sides. And we get 4y equals 1. Now in order to get y by itself, we're going to divide by 4. And we get y equals 1/4 or 0.25. Either answer is accepted. And on the other side, we bring down the y plus 2, set it equal to 0, and we're going to subtract the 2 on both sides. We're just solving the equation. That's it. We know how to solve equations already. So your answer is y equals negative 2 and y equals 1/4, or you can do y equals 0.25. Either answer is accepted. Today, I do want to focus on really quick, before we start factoring, let's take a look at number 4. 4 is already factored for us, but I want to point out to you that x is a factor. So we're going to be T-charting between these two, just like this, because x technically is a factor. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set x equal to 0, and we're going to set x plus 7 equal to 0. Now, on the left side, x equals 0, I don't have to solve anything. X is by itself. So I'm just going to move on to the next equation. So I subtract 7 on both sides, and I get x equals negative 7. So I have x equals 0 and x equals negative 7. So today I really want to focus on the factoring trinomials. We'll do the trinomial ones today. Now, we all know how to factor trinomials. You guys all did pretty well with that. So let's take a look at what we would do. So for number 6, the first step is we always need to make sure get equation equal to 0. Your equation always has to be equal to 0. If it's not, that's when we do what we did this past Friday and Thursday, where we move the terms around in order to get the equation equal to 0. If we take a look at number 6, it already is equal to 0 for us. So all we have to do is factor. So when we factor trinomials, I want two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to negative 8. So let's think about this. Two numbers that multiply to 12 and add to negative 8. When we go in our calculator, remember, go to that y equals type in 12 divided by x, and we'll see our two numbers would be -6 and -2. So when I factor, it looks like this. And don't forget that equal to 0. So that looks like number 1, what we just did. Now we t-chart between the terms. So step 2 is factor. And step 3, we're just going to solve each equation. So x minus 6 equals 0. So add 6 on both sides. So x equals 6. And we have x minus 2 equals 0. We're going to add 2 on both sides. So x equals 2. So your answers are x equals 2 and x equals 6. Right now I want you to pause and I want you to do number 7 on your own. So we're going to factor trinomial because it's already equal to 0. And then you're going to t-chart and solve each equation. So go ahead, pause that video, and we'll go over it together. Now that you did it on your own, let's see how you did. So remember, factoring trinomial, you need two numbers that multiply to 6 and add to -5. Those two numbers should have been -6. Those two numbers are -3, -5. Not -5, -2. Sorry about that. So we have x minus 3 and x minus 2, and we set them equal to 0. So I set both sides equal to 0. We're going to how about we solve one at a time? How about that? So I'm just going to focus on the left side right now. So I'm going to solve the equation on the left. And then I'm going to solve the equation on the right. So my answers are x equals 3 and x equals 2. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now the only thing is, if we look at number 10 is not equal to 0. So we cannot factor yet. It must be equal to 0 in order to start factoring. So as we learned on Thursday and Friday, when we're solving to get the standard form of a quadratic equation, all we're going to do is move the terms. You move the term to the x squared. We're never moving that x squared. So if we look at this, the 36 is what we want to move because we want to move that over to be on the same side as the x squared. Remember, we're going for this standard equation. We want it to look like this, just to refresh your memory. So in order to get number 10 to look like this, we just subtract the 36 on both sides. X squared plus 9x minus 36 equals 0. And then you would factor, t-chart, and solve like we did in all the other ones. Now, if you're having trouble moving the terms in order to get them equal to 0, you can refer to the answer key from the last worksheet, and those have everything already solved for 0, to get it in quadratic, the standard quadratic equation. So today we are just focusing on trinomials, and then we will focus on GCF and dots. So that is how we solve quadratic equations by factoring.